Hey guys, welcome to another video on the Inside Spurs channel. Happy Wednesday morning to you all. In this video, we're going to be talking a little bit around the Son and Saudi Arabia interest that's kind of resurfaced. We'll be talking a little bit about potential Leroy Sane rejecting Tottenham, which we all kind of could see coming. We're going to talk about Everton's interest in Bissouma, and we're going to talk a little bit more about a few other things. Now, I'm going to be real in this video. I'm not talking about Ange's future. I'm really bored about it, to be honest. I'm really bored. It's every day with, is Ange staying? Is Ange going? We're not talking about Ange. All right. So if you want to talk about Ange, go away, because I'm not talking about him this morning. I want to talk about some of these reports that are coming out. I will be putting out really just more snippet videos of some of the things I talk about in videos going forward for people that maybe can't, sit and enjoy the lives for that long, because obviously they go on for a little while. So I'll be doing that as well. Morning, Graham, Spurs, Dragon, Bazza, Luke, how are we all? Look, let's jump in and let's start with a little bit around Heung Min-Son. Now, obviously, we all are aware Heung Min-Son has 1 year left on his contract. Obviously, I think recently, and especially the last couple of years, obviously I know he had that big injury in the season that Conte got sacked, and that's why his performances dipped and sort of fell off a little bit. But he has been picking up a few more sort of smaller injuries, a few more niggling issues here and there. And he's played, look, he's been a warrior because he's played through a lot of issues. That's why when people go, he's washed, and this is Spurs fans saying that he's washed, I kind of just ignore what they say because, again, when we always talk about these things, it's can we always bring in context? Can we always talk context? And with Son wasn't that fit this year. And it's something you have to take into account. I love Heung Min-Son. He could have left us years ago, for big money, for big clubs and things like that. But, he is a guy who I would say definitely bleeds Tottenham more than some of the players that you like more in your Tottenham supporting life. He's more of a legend, than one of my favorite players ever. More of a legend. You're welcome. More of a legend than Harry Kane. He is Mr. Tottenham, but everything must come to an end, and that's the other thing that we need to be fair about on this. Okay, everything must at times come to an end. It will be sad, and the day that Son does leave, regardless if that's tomorrow or a year's time or 5 years time, it will be a sad day for the fan base because he is a Tottenham legend. He is, he's one of the greatest players that has played for Tottenham. One of the greatest humans that's played for Tottenham as well. Just gets the fan base. He does. I know at times after a loss, it's like, they always come out with, we're upset about the game. We're upset about this. We need to be better. And it does annoy a lot of us, but he does say it from a place of love. But let's talk about Heung Min-Son and his current situation. So Sam Wallace, through Telegraph, was saying that Son could leave this summer as the club seek to generate transfer funds and reshape their squad ahead of a return to the Champions League next season. Now, I think, look, don't get me wrong, a lot of people sort of saw that and got wound up and said, "Oh, we qualify for Europe, yet we can't seem to, buy players and blah blah blah." For me, it's not about how much money we could be spending this summer. I don't think Son is anything really, a sale is anything to do with that, because I think there is a lot of money there to be spending this summer. Champions League football is back. That comes with huge TV rights. You can charge more on your sponsorships. You can do all sorts. Don't forget also, you get 4 home games of the Champions League. We know Spurs turn over a big amount of money per home game. That's included. But also, I did a crazy thing, and I showed the prize winnings for the Conference League. Chelsea won 22 million euros. The worst team in the Champions League earned pretty much the exact same, about 22 million, basically. So the money is incredible, even for just getting there, right? Because you got to think they probably would have made about 30 million, that team. You factor in Spurs, who get more eyes on them than a Slovan Bratislava, I think it was. You get more eyes, bigger turnout at stadiums, much more revenue, charge obviously crazy amounts on tickets. Also, every win is multiple million, you know. So even if Spurs win 3 games, they draw, let's say, another 2, and they lose 3, right? Let's say that's what they do. So they'd come out of that with 11 points, right? My maths hasn't worked out there, has it? Let's say they win 3, draw 3, lose 2. Okay, there you go. That would be better. The crazy money is there, you know. So it's not about the transfer budget that they want to sell Son to improve. It's the cash flow. That's what they're looking at, is the cash flow side of things. And oh, someone's called me. Who's that? Who would you be? Who would you be? It's cash flow. That's what it's all about. It's cash flow. And that's why we talk about, you know, hey, look, quick, easy sales of, you know, Solomon. We look at quick, easy sales of, you know, Højbjerg's going to free up cash flow this summer, because that is a player that's getting sold. But then obviously you are buying Danso, so it probably just takes away from one to give to the other. You know, we talk about Bissouma in a minute. That's going to make an impact. But also, you know, when it free up cash flow, it comes to things like players' wages. You know, Fraser Forster's done. Alfie Whiteman's done. Sergio Reguilon's done. Timo Werner's done. You know, Ben Davies might be off. You're saving hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. And I think that's the key thing there. You know, you are going to get cash flow coming in. You'll make money on loan deals, but then it's what are you doing with Matisse Tell? I always thought the Matisse Tell deal was apparently accounted for, but I could be wrong there, you know. El Tente, mate, how are you? Simon, yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Again, we're not going to talk about Ange and if players want to follow him if he was to leave, or players to stay if he was to stay. We're not talking. We're going to try and not talk about him for once, because I think I can speak for the majority of us. We're also bored of talking about it. And again, I will be, you know, clear across this board. If Daniel Levy expected Ange to stay next season, he actually doesn't need to say a thing, because it's business as usual, right? We don't need to have our hands held for the manager's staying. By the way, we don't need that. We can't even demand that, because it's like it's a media driven point that Ange might be sacked. If Daniel Levy was like, they've had a conversation, for example, and he was like, so yeah, next season's gonna be good, you know, probably spend, yeah, we're looking at, you know, together, do those meetings, oh, well, let's look at these targets and blah blah blah. He doesn't need to say anything. He doesn't. As much as you love or hate Daniel Levy, he does not owe you a thing to tell you if the manager's staying or not. Because if the manager was going, yeah, fine. But if the manager's staying, it's business as usual. Get on with it. The media has taken this and thrown gasoline on this small little bonfire, you know. So that's why I'm kind of ignoring it until, you know, if Ange gets sacked or not. I'm ignoring it from now on until big news comes out. Because I'm just really bored talking about it, you know. So there you have it. Anyway, moving on though, with Son, there's a little bit more to add to the situation. He's subject to renewed interest from the Saudi Pro League. He would need to be persuaded to move to Saudi Arabia, having already rejected their advances in the past. Apparently, not last season, the season before, they offered Heung Min-Son a 4-year contract worth 25 million. They're going to need to offer that minimum per year for someone like Heung Min-Son to take any notice of it. Especially when they're offering like 3 years for Bruno Fernandes at 200 million. You think Son's going to do 4 years at 25? Come on. For Son to move to Saudi are going to have to offer stupid money. I don't see him moving to Saudi. I've always sort of thought he'd try and stay in Europe, or to be honest, I could see him in America. I think, you know, you could, as a footballer, you see what America has done for certain players and their brand. If you've got South Korea's biggest star coming to play in your league, and the MLS is, no offense to Americans, the MLS is crap. Like, Messi at 37 walks around the pitch and just does whatever he wants in games because they can't tackle him. It's like your dad, you know, at his son's 4-year-old birthday party. None of them could tackle him. It's just, Son would kill it in that league. Take it, you know, 2 or 3 years there, absolute rock star, and there you go. he's an absolute phenomenon, and that's the thing that he could do, and that's the fact that I've always thought he would do. I don't see him in Saudi. I don't think this will take any. Look, don't get me wrong. Daniel Levy would go, "Oh, look at the money we can get from Saudi. How good would that be?" But if Son doesn't want to go, he's not going to go. You can't force a player to leave your club. You can kind of nudge him to the door, but he has to be the one to walk through that door. And if Son isn't keen on it, then trust me, it ain't happening. You know what I mean? I think if he was to leave, I feel like America, outside of Europe, America would make so much sense. I can see him back in Germany. He knows the German league. He's been there. He's done that. He got the T-shirt. If I was him, maybe stay away from Leverkusen because they're not sure about what's happening with Ten Hag. They're through influx at the moment. I don't know. But yeah, I weirdly think Son is going to stay. He's going to do one more year. And therefore, the year after that, he might go. But there we have it. Son was leave on a high, to be fair, Simon. I've just seen Steve say we could buy Regulon on a free. Steve, get out. I'm not having this. Not having this in my chat. Moving on. Got quite a bit to talk about still. So that's that on Son, all right? Leroy Sane. Toby Altshuffle. Altshuffle, I think is how you say it. He's one of the reporters at Sport Bild. Has said that Leroy Sane isn't interested in a move to Tottenham. And what have I said all along on this Leroy Sane situation? I have said, we aren't going for him. We can afford him, but in Daniel Levy's eyes, we can't afford him. Our name is being used by Leroy Sané's camp to get a better deal. Or, to be fair, it could be used by Bayern Munich to say, hey, do you really want to go to Tottenham or do you want to stay here? And I completely would understand why he would say, I'd rather stay here. We were never getting Leroy Sane. Twitter was getting too much into it. We were never signing Leroy Sane. And again, I will be really clear on this. Too many people still think a free transfer is free. You're living in cuckoo land. Leroy Sane is not a cheap transfer. People said to me, yeah, but if you get Grealish for a year and he does well, you're going to want to try and keep him. It's like, yeah, but we're not tied into keeping. Even if we liked what he did at Spurs, we wouldn't be tied into keeping him. You're tied in to a 3/4 year deal for a guy who's 30 in 6 months, earning 300 plus grand a week. Smart teams don't do that sort of business. They don't. Smart teams stay away from those sort of deals, actually. But yeah, I said all along, we were never going to be getting Leroy Sane. We were never in for Leroy Sane the way that the German media were putting it out there. It's not going to happen. I always said it wasn't going to happen. This isn't a shocking report to me. I didn't think Leroy Sane wants to stay at Bayern, right? He does. And Bayern probably, for the most part, want him to stay. But they also go, mate, you can't be earning the money you're on right now. They gave Davies a massive contract. Musiala's on a massive deal. They're trying to move off of players like Goretzka, Kingsley Coman. They moved off of Eric Dyer because obviously they brought in Jonathan Tah. A lot of players are on big money at Bayern, big money. They want to clear off some of those players that, let's be honest, they're a bit old now. And I think that's why they're saying, Sane, we want you to stay, but let's be real, mate. You're not worth the money that we're paying you, and you're only going to get older. So we want to drop that back a little bit and move that way. Like I said, Sane was never going to come to Spurs. Every single time it was like, Spurs are leading the race. It was like, no, we're not. No, we're not. The guy wants 300 grand a week. We haven't even got a player at 200 grand a week at Spurs currently. And that includes your captain who's been here for God knows how many years now, and Heung Min-Son, who at his peak and Sane's peak, Son was miles better than. He's not got 200 grand a week. Christian Romero, World Cup winning, double Copa America winning centre-back, Serie A defender of the season before coming to Spurs. and now a Europa League centre-back winning player who was player of the tournament or whatever, he's not on 200 grand a week. So why would we get a guy who's 30 who, let's be real, he was never worth that money in the first place? Not his Man City self, nor his Bayern self. I said all along as well. I watch so much Bayern because of Harry and for the most part as well Eric Dyer, but obviously he didn't play as much as Harry did. And you watch Leroy Sane and he'll do something absolutely incredible, but one-on-one or his decision making and effectiveness with it is not good enough. For the money they pay, it's not good enough. You'd probably say Serge Gnabry's, end product's better, but he can't stay fit. Kingsley Coman, I think, is probably Kingsley's done. He's had quite a few big injuries as well. He's done, So, yeah, I'm not bothered about this. We can do better for the money it's going to cost. Like I said, he might be free on paper, but guess what? When we talk about paper, football's not played on paper. Football's not, business-wise, is not done on paper. He's 300 grand a week for a 4-year deal, right? So we're talking, 13.2 or whatever it is, 13 to 15 million a year, 4 years. That's about 60 million. Let's call it a bit less. Let's call it 55 million over those 4 years. He probably wants a 10 million signing on fee. His agent wants a 10 million agent fee. It's a 75 million pound deal. Is that cheap? Is that cheap? Absolutely not cheap. He was never cheap. He's free on paper. It's like Jonathan David. Jonathan David is not as cheap as you think it's going to be. Jonathan David is going to be expensive. All right. We don't have the ability to pull big players, as our fans think. When was the last time we got a big name player who was wanted by many clubs? Well, it depends on how you view that. Bayern fans started a hashtag Sane out. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, again, that's another thing. If his own fans don't want him, why in that way, like, I don't want certain players at Spurs, but I wouldn't ever start a player X out, hashtag drive. I would never do that. If they're doing that, that shows you a lot. And again, watch a lot of Bayern this year, and he would drive you insane watching him. Absolutely insane. Again, a good player, but when it comes to output, it's not good enough for the money it's going to cost, Whatever players we end up signing, I hope they're durable. I agree, Graham. I absolutely agree. Yeah, well, Mbuemo's not going to happen. Mbuemo's going to join Man United. Thoughts on the home kit? It's a bit meh, but like every kit, it will grow on me and I won't hate it. Would I not consider a Reguilon out? No, because I knew he was leaving. And even a Reguilon out, he'd have dug his heels in more and somehow stayed. Apple and elderflower this morning. Very solid. You know me. But there you go. Anyway, moving on. We've still got more. So that's that on Leroy Sane. Let's talk Bissouma. And I think this is a phenomenal deal for Bissouma. And, well, no, maybe not Bissouma, but Everton. But Bissouma is aware of the volume of interest. Everton, I'm told, could come into the mix. That was from Ben Jacobs. Look, I'm going to be real. Like, if Everton are interested, Everton are interested in Richie and Bissouma, by the way. Just saying, they want 2 Spurs players. They're interested in 2 Spurs players. Balloons. This MacBook just does what it wants, doesn't it? I might somehow need to turn these things off. Want those 2 players. 25, Richie. 15 to 20 on Bissouma. Is that the ticket to Jared Branthwaite? I think that's a ticket to Jared Branthwaite. And I think, look, we need another centre-back. He wouldn't be forced to play all those huge games straight away. He would actually get time to develop at Spurs because obviously, but then he'd get a good amount of football as well. Like the amount of people that go, why would a player come to us if he's 4th choice? Let me flip that back on you. Why do you think he's fourth choice? Why do you think he wouldn't get good enough football? Why do you think our players can play 60 to 70 games a season without any injury issues? Like, look, I'll be real. Look, that back four this season of Dessie, Doggy, Mickey, Kuti, and Porro, what, they started and played together about 20 games. And we played how many games this season? 38 in the Premier League alone. They played 20 games. They didn't even play half. They played half a season in the Premier League together if it was just the Premier League. But we had a deep Carling Cup run or League Cup run or EFL Cup if you're a Gen Z X or whatever it is nowadays. I don't know what the young kids are. That was a long journey. FA Cup went to the quarterfinal. I think it was quarterfinal. Might have been the round before that. Don't know. But we played, multiple games of the FA Cup. The Europa League, 8 games in the league part of it. Then you had AZ, Frankfurt, Bodo Glimt. That's another 6. And then a final. So we're talking 15 games, 38 in the Premier League, right? So alone, we're already at 53 games. So forget the 2 against Liverpool and let's say the 3 rounds before that. That's another 5 games in the League Cup. We played 60 games a season, basically. And those back 4 together were able to start somewhere between 15 and 20 games. That's why our drop-off this season was massively down to the lack of defensive quality that we had. Got no left-back behind Destia Doggy. And if you know, I do not count Sergio Reguilon. We had only one centre-back, out and out. Ben Davies, you could consider left-back, but is that good enough quality to do what Destia Doggy does for us? No. So you had one centre-back who then blew his knee out in the middle of January. You were actually down to no centre-backs for 2 weeks until you signed Big Kev Danso, who I now think, hey, I like Big Kev Danso. I like Big Kev Danso. I think he's great. Spence at right back. So we've got 2 guys behind the back 4 that we can look at and go, there's some quality there. Well, last time I checked that we play a back 4, so we're screwed. That's why we need, Radu's not going to be back until the winter. Like, he's going to be back, in 4 to 6 months, something like that. So you're going to need a centre back, unless Vuskovic or Phillips absolutely blows you away. You need another centre back, and then at left back, I've been, I don't know, maybe the loudest Spurs fan on YouTube that does content say, for the love of God, please get a left back. And it's not because I don't rate Destia Doggy. I think Destia Doggy is a phenomenal left back. What I'd love is Destia Doggy to stay fitter, because when he's staying fit and he's not going to play 3,000 minutes a week, guess what happens? Bloody hell, Destia Doggy looks really good. Europa League run looked absolutely phenomenal. He's playing once a week, right? We need another left back, don't we? Unless you view Spence as left back and then you go and get a right back. However you want to phrase it, you need to go get a fullback this summer. I like Archie Gray. I think Archie Gray could become a rock star. He's not fullback, especially in the Premier League. He's not fullback. Against lower league teams, fine, not a problem. Happy for him to be at right back or left back, but he isn't in the Premier League. He'd be a midfielder. So we need to get him midfielder minutes, right? We'll come back to Bissouma in a second on that, but you need to add in there. And then your drop-off wouldn't be as bad. You're then going to be having players playing, I don't know, their actual positions, which would be nice, like Archie Gray playing in the midfield instead of playing centre-back as an 18-year-old centre midfielder. It'd be really nice. So that's why I think this summer is crucial in so many different ways. Don't look at, we will sign a marquee name. We always do. We always sign a marquee name. Last year was Solanke, right? I think this year will be Eberechi Eze. Don't look at the Cunhas and Embuemos and get upset, or the Reindeers or the 8 Noris. Don't look at it like that. Just because those players are Prem players who are moving within the Prem doesn't mean you can't get quality for a similar level of quality, but cheaper. And I think people kind of look at it and go, God, we didn't spend much money compared to this team. All right, well, look how much Man United spent in the last 10 years. Look how much we've spent in the last 10 years. Tell me right now, would you want their squad over ours? No, I wouldn't. And I genuinely feel like with 4 to 5 additions that's a really solid squad. They have 4 to 5 additions. They still need another 4 to 5 minimum. So that's my thinking on it. So, anyway, on back to Bissouma. Obviously, that's why I was talking about Jared Branthwaite. But if you weren't sure, I was talking about Jared Branthwaite for that reason. I like Jared Branthwaite. And if you've got a centre-back room, because Vuskovic may go on loan to the Bundesliga next season, okay? Just putting it out there. He may go on loan to the Bundesliga next season. He has interest from Germany. And Phillips, we'll see what happens with Phillips. I don't know. Radu's not back into the winter. I do not want to go into another season where we've got 3 centre-backs for 6 months of the season. I'm so bored of the inept recruitment at Spurs at times. Why is it that we love going into a season with 3 centre-backs? You play 2 every week. All it takes is one to get injured. You're down to no backups or rotational options. So having a centre-back room of Mickey van der Ven, Christian Romero, Big Kev Dancer, and a Jared Branthwaite, I think is a phenomenal back room. I think that's a brilliant centre-back room. And the beauty is with that, you don't play Mickey every week, 3 times a week. You don't play Christian Romero 3 times a week. You can say to him, lads, these 2 are great. We're going to get them some minutes. And that's the way I look at it. You go and get a Branthwaite, you go and get a solid left back, and then before you know it, you look at your back 4 and go, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And the beauty with that is, if you do get an injury or 2, you go, Archie Gray can play the 3rd level right back position. If we need him, break class in case of emergency, we can get him some minutes if necessary there. If there's issues with Porro and Spence, right? That's fine. I have no issues with Archie Gray being used like that. But he's a midfielder. Let's get him into the midfield when we can. Obviously, there might be times where we go, we might be sending off and you can't make any changes. You go, Archie's at right back. Okay, he can play a bit there. That's fine. But it's a short-term 10, 15 minutes or for one game, not for 6 months this season, he's playing left back, centre back and right back. That's not any more what we want. I'm glad he got the minutes there, but now it's time to, he's 19. He's going to become 19-year-old. Let's get him into that midfield, or he's 19, whatever. I don't care. I'm the left back king. I am. I've been so on this. And if you knew, welcome. But I have always been lambasting the club for the lack of left back recruitment. Into the midfield, though, with Bissouma. I think Bissouma would be a great move to Everton. I really do. I think him and Richarlison, Richie knows the club, loves Everton. He does love Everton. We know he does. Him and Bissouma, obviously everyone talks about Prem proven and things like that. He would suit. He would absolutely suit them. Obviously, Bissouma though, I think could be really good at Everton. I really could. I think obviously he can play in that sort of low block defensive points. Obviously, they got Idrissa Gana Gay. God, try and set that one quickly. Good lord. Decore, I think, is still there. James Garner, so they've got a few options there. But Bissouma, I think, would add a lot more to that room. And Richie, look, I think Calvert-Lewin's leaving this summer. I think he's leaving on a free as well. Obviously, I know got Beto. He looked like he had sort of started to come on a little bit. Decore's gone. Apologies. So again, Bissouma, I know he doesn't play that far forward, but if you had a midfield 3 that's fairly solid and Bissouma's a part of that, you could play a bit of a Spurs formation, like a 4-3-3 with 2 number 8s. You got Ndiaye at left wing, right wing. I think they need to add in at right wing because I think Harrison's gone back to Leeds. That's contentious for Leeds fans. They need a right winger, I think. Could probably do with it. A couple of wingers, to be fair, I think, Everton. And then, striker, Richie. I mean, Richie could play left wing for him and you can move, Ndiaye at right wing even. But Richie, cult hero, Everton would love to have him back, but we're also not going to give Everton a discount on him because they didn't give a discount. Although they thought they could sell him for like 80 million to us. And it's like, cool. I've got blonde hair. That shirt's green and the sign's yet white. Are we just making things up? Richie was never worth 80 million, even on his absolute best day, So we won't be giving them a discount for sure. But I think, look, if you can get 25 million on Richie, 15, maybe 20 million if there's add-ons included for the Bissouma deal, you're talking 40, 45 million. That's a good amount of money. And this is what I've talked about. Obviously, if you missed the video that I uploaded last night on Johan Lang's time at Aston Villa, go and check it out. I think there's a lot of people that don't know how he had turned Aston Villa around to kind of where they are now. He built the foundations. He took them from 17th up the league, you know, got them European football. Go and watch that from last night. It's a good little video. But obviously with Prachi as well, Prachi couldn't sell a player. This is a kind of a summer where there is a few players that you can cash in on. Mano Solomon, that's one. Brian Hill, there's another. Bissouma, Richie. Like, if you cash in on those four, right? 25 for Richie, 15 for Bissouma, 15 for Solomon, and let's say 7 for Brian Hill, okay? You might think it's a bit more, but I'm just going with an idea, right? That's over 60 million on those four. Four that aren't going to be here long term, who in some cases were injured most of the season and didn't contribute enough to that. But also they're in, you know, Bissouma last year of contract, late 20s. Richie into his mid to late 20s now. It's just time, cash in, move on, you know. Brian Hill, you're not using, so just cash in and just get some money out of that. And it might be 5 million, it might be even a bit less, but, you know, about 60 million for those four is probably about right. That would sort your cash flow issues out. And yeah, look, you'd need to add in a striker. I do kind of get it if you need to add in a striker. Yeah, fine. I think we were always going to add in a striker. I think Spurs are going to add 4 to 5 players this summer. I'd say left back, centre back, a midfielder, a right winger, and a striker. That's kind of my thinking. Now, don't get me wrong. If they go and get a centre back who can play left back or a left back that plays centre back, maybe they go that route. But I'm just saying, on paper, that's where they'll be looking. Now, they might end up not going for a right winger and grabbing another left winger. That'll be mental. You know, we'll see. We'll see. DJ, mate, how are you? Look, I think someone asked me Adam Wharton. There's a few people saying that. Proper player, we won't be signing him. He's going to be going for about 100 midfield. Would I like Adam Wharton? Yes. Will he be available? Sure. But the money's going to be above 100 million. Will a team do that? No. He'll be staying at Palace this season. Obviously, Mark Guay is touted for Bayern Munich. They've got some centre-back issues. Kim Min-jae's injured. Upamecano's injured. There's one other. Hiroki Ito. He's been injured pretty much all season. They've got Jonathan Tah, but he won't be allowed to play in the Club World Cup unless they come to a deal with Leverkusen. So they'll be playing Stanisic and like Goretzka at centre-back or something like that. So, you know, they'll be probably getting Mark Guay. And that's, the Club World Cup starts in about a week. Like, let's be real. You've got a situation right now where it's like, hey, you want Eze? You might not have the runway you think you're going to have. You're not going to have until August 31st to get this done at a good rate for a decent deal. You might only get a week from now. Because if Bayern would, but let's say Bayern grab a centre-back. Don't know to Mark. Actually, no, let's say it's Mark Guay. If they were to grab Mark Guay, financial positions are stronger for Palace when it comes to selling players. And they'll go, yeah, you can have Eze. That's his release clause. You pay that. Can we do a negotiation? No, we don't actually need the money. So it's up to you if you want him or not. Just saying. Up the lights for Andy's stream, people. Help the bloke buy more beers. He needs more. Appreciate DJ Class 2s. Yeah, everyone that has liked the videos recently, thank you so much. The channel has been through a boom. It has it's really grown the last few days. I think like in the last few days, it's grown like over 100 new subscribers, which for a channel like this is kind of mad, you know. So I appreciate everyone that's liked and commented and shared videos and things like that. Yeah, absolute legends. Seeing what else is around. Paulinho didn't do. I don't think he did well at Bayern this season. Look, Kimmich is obviously fantastic. They really like Pavlovic. I'd expect those two to be the central midfield partnership going forward. I think they're going to try and move off of Goretzka. And Paulinho will be one of the centre midfield options. But I don't think he did very well, to be honest. It kind of looked like as well at times, when he's playing in a really massive team like Bayern, where they have 70% possession and a team counterattacks, he does look a little bit leggy when he's having to chase back, for 10 to 12 counterattacks a game, and they're moving at pace. I think at Fulham they didn't have that. Fulham could sit back, and he suited that. He would be brilliant at like an Inter Milan, right? Oh, he'd be so good in Italy. Bayern, I think he struggled a little bit last season, and maybe he gets better next season. But he's also basically 30, so he's not really going to get much better. He might become a bit more adjusted to German football, but he's not going to get any much better. He's late. He's older than me, I think, and I'm not going to get much better. Something like Howard, yeah, I don't know about him. It'd be interesting to see what happens with like Kolo Muani if he officially joins Juve this summer. Will Spurs be back in there? What about CDM? There's not really been much come out really about CDM. Obviously Cardoso links that he might go to Atleti. Angel Gomez is another midfield. I'm talking about just central midfield options. Don't get annoyed if it's not exactly to your T of that's not a 6 and that's a 10 or that's an 8. Gomez, obviously, there's links there. I'm trying to think. I can't think of anyone else right now at central midfield that Spurs are, looking at. And maybe they look at Archie Gray as a massive addition to that room. Maybe I think they still need to add in a midfield option if they move off of Bissouma, especially. But I think Bergvall. I think Bergvall next season is going to Bergvall next season. By the way, I think he's going to be absolutely incredible. I'm putting it out there. I think he is going to be in for a magical season. What we saw this season, he's still a teenager, and he was absolutely brilliant. Especially last 6 months of the season, he was brilliant. Just saying. I think he's going to really develop next season. That's your starting number 8. Maddison's probably your starting number 10. And then it's down to 6. Is it Bentancur or is it a committee? Are they going to do number 6 by committee? I think the days of needing a 6'5" CDM to dominate midfields, it's not what it used to be. I watched a 5'4", 5'5" Portuguese guy dominate a Champions League final, who failed at Wolves, by the way, but dominated the Champions League final. Who, he wasn't scoring hat tricks and that, but he absolutely was the best player on the pitch, in my opinion, Vitinha. So I don't think you need a guy. You need a guy that can read the game, and you need the other two midfielders to have the energy, desire, and will to defensively work and track back. Hence why I've always looked at Bissouma as an 8, because I thought defensively would get back. Bentancur I look at as an 8, because I think defensively can do that work, and then you'd get a 6 who can more, snuff out plays. But João Neves and Fabian next to Vitinha, that's incredible. So yeah, I don't think you need like a dominant 6 as such. You just need a guy that knows how to read a game of football. I don't know what's happening with Palace's Europa League situation. I dare even to guess. It's kind of mad. I should have increased by more, as it's one of the best Spurs YouTube shows. No over the top reactions, ground and a good chat. Appreciate Al Dente, mate. Absolute legends. Cheers, Al Dente. Appreciate that. The apple and elderflower is flowing like nectar. Yeah, Heung, again, I just don't see any real credible links on him. I've seen a few Spurs players saying, "Oh, we're interested in him." It's like, yeah, we got linked to him six months ago. Linked to him last summer, I think. I've talked about him on this channel multiple times. He's a good player. Has an Arsenal tattoo, but he's a good player. So again, though, he plays in that Ruben Amorim system, that 3-5, that 3-4-2-1. God, why am Man United not going for Heung? They need a midfielder. That's like the big thing they need is that midfielder. The guy knows Amorim's system, but then it's like, what do you do with Kobe Mainu? Agume from Sevilla. Mateus Fernandez looks good. Swen, I don't think Southampton are going to go. I think they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep Fernandez. They are willing to let Dibbling go to raise the funds, but I think they want to keep Fernandes because I think Southampton fans really rate Fernandes, by the way. Hugo Larsson, yeah, been linked to him. He feels a bit more further forward, though. Like, he's not a 6 as such. I know people want to think about 6. It'd be great. Yeah, Luke, I agree. Look, Barcola, I don't see happening either. Barcola is he's an important player for PSG. Alistair Gold's been criticising the silence in action from the board over transfers. He's not wrong to. He isn't wrong to. Hang on. So, I mean, besides someone that has some in the know work in Spurs, and he said we aren't falling behind on transfers. I know it feels like it. Please relax. We have targets there, irrespective of the manager. We've already spoken to the targets about transfer strategy. They've spoken to Thomas Frank about the transfer strategy. I'm not happy. He says, I'm not happy how we operate either, but at least it's something. I mean, that's interesting. It's interesting. It's quiet at Brentford's end as well. I'm just saying about that. I'm not talking about Ange, but it's quiet at their end as well. Ravella. Look, there's a lot of decent midfield options. Absolutely. I think, look, the people that think we're going to spend 50 million per player in per position. Look, listen here. Yeah, you listen here. It's not happening. We're not spending 250 million this window. We will spend how we normally spend, about 150 to 200 million, including sales. Net spend will be lower than that, obviously, due to the sales, but that's what we'll spend. You know, we all want Eze. Eze is going to cost 60 million, right? If you spend 150, you've got 90 left to play with. If you were to get Jared Branthwaite, you've got 40 million to play left with. That's why the Angel Gomez links are there, because he's free on paper. You know, so Madueke's 30. You've got 10 million left to make that 150. Let's say you get a fullback for another 30. You got 170. Plus sales of, let's say, 70 to 80. There you go. That would be their window. Not saying that's who they go for. I'm just talking names and values. That's what that would work out as. So, yeah, if the spend reaches above 200 million, I would be shocked to my core. But it's not going to be. It's not their game. They'll spend enough that people are excited by it, but not too much. Not too much that the situation is, you know, people are hateful that we've not spent enough. They'll spend just enough to get at least the majority of fans happy. It's what they always do. You know, will people see through that again this time? Maybe. You know, look, they want experienced players to come in. I still think don't be opposed to signing a few youngsters to come through into the academy. I think it really has developed the academy recently. You know, last sort of year or so, bring in those younger players. They need to continue to do that. They really do. And then, like I said, left back, centre back, midfielder, winger, and attacker. That's what they need to do. And actually, you know, they might look at the winger, for example, and go, well, Kulu can play a bit of the wing. You know, Tell can play a bit of wing. Still got Odebear and Son and Mikey Moore. You know, if they said Eze can play a bit of wing if necessary. Like, well, we've got enough to get by, but we want Eze. Right, Madders can play a bit of wing if you really, truly want. But, you know, we've got enough to get by. I think they have a name as the centerpiece of their chance of business. And, like, for example, I think it could be Eze. I think then they have a couple of sort of just a tier below that, you know, like that 40 million pound mark, a couple there, and then a couple like 15, 20 millers. And I think that's what they'll be doing. And that'll work out about 170, 180. And there'll be sales of about 80, maybe even to 100, depending on what else the market gives you. They'll be saving loads on wages, like loads on wages. With Solomon, Timo, Reguilon, Forster, Whiteman, if Davies leaves, Bissouma, Richie, players going out on loan, they save money on wages when they go out on loan. So that's what I'm saying. They're in for a very busy summer, but just don't expect them to be spending 50 million for 5 different players. It's not what we do. So there you go. Will they do enough to make us be able to challenge in more than one competition? I hope so. But the learning from last season of using the squad earlier in the season, I've always said, he now knows he can trust Bergvall and Spence. He knows what he has in Gray, Odebear, Mikey when necessary, Big Kev Danso. If this is Ange, then obviously they know what they have there. They'll rotate more. They'll use the squad better, more efficiently, and more often earlier in the season. Therefore, the other players who broke down this season, who are deemed, quote, the starters, they will last longer this season. Their quality of performances will stay higher. They're not going to get injured as much. On paper, they shouldn't. But if you get a new manager in, you might have the same situation you did this season where he goes, I really trust these 15 players, but I'm not sure about these other ones. Got to be aware of it, And yeah, by the way, Højbjerg will get sold this summer. So add another sort of 12, 15 onto sales. When I talk about 60 million for those 4, you've reached about 75 million on those guys, on those 5 players leaving. You never know who else could leave. You never know who else could leave this squad. Just saying. Kulu's out for a while. Again, though, it's like, will they have enough through Johnson, Odebear, Tell, Mikey, Sonny? Will they have enough between those guys at wing to get by? Eze, if necessary, play him on the left wing. They would have enough. That would have enough. Yeah, absolutely. But we'll see. We'll see. But look, thank you all so much for joining me this morning. Thank you for all the comments and the likes. You're an absolute legend. It grows the community, which is great. Check out the Johan Lang video from last night. It's about 10, 12 minutes long. It's a good little video. It's a good little watch, and it's good to learn about who the guy is running us right this second. I'll be back later if there's any breaking news. But if not, there'll be some shorts coming out of some of the topics that I talk about today a little bit later. So for the people that missed it, it'll be there. Don't worry. But if not, I wish you all the best of days. Enjoy your mornings, your afternoons, your evenings, wherever you are in the world. And I will be back tomorrow to talk a lot more about Tottenham. Take care, everyone. Peace.